2:15 in the afternoon, the Strait of Hormuz. The nuclear aircraft carrier U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln maintained a steady course of 16 knots through the emerald waters. This was a standard transit through a narrow choke point, until every sonar screen in the strike group went black. 7 minutes of absolute silence would soon challenge everything the United States Navy knew about undersea warfare. The sun was a white disk in a haze of salt and sand. The heat on the flight deck reached 104 degrees. Below the waterline, the world was usually a symphony of engine drones and biological clicks. The Lincoln was surrounded by a protective screen of Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. Their sensors were the eyes and ears of the fleet, inside the Combat Information Center of the Lincoln. The air was cool and smelled of ozone. Dozens of monitors bathed the room in a soft blue light. The sonar supervisor stared at his display. The waterfall of acoustic data had simply stopped. It was not static. It was not a malfunction. It was a perfect, flat line. The sonar supervisor spoke into his headset. Tactical Action Officer. Sonar is down. We have lost all acoustic input across all arrays. The Tactical Action Officer, known as the TAO, turned in his chair. Confirm. Is this a system failure on the Lincoln? The supervisor shook his head. Negative. I am on the net with the destroyers Starrett and Kidd. They are reporting the same phenomenon. Total signal loss. It is as if the water itself has stopped conducting sound. The TAO felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They were in the middle of the most heavily surveyed waterway on Earth. Iranian fast attack craft were visible on the horizon. Land-based missile batteries were tracked by satellite, but the greatest threat always came from below. Submarines, mines, without sonar. The carrier was a blind giant. Alert the admiral, the TAO ordered. Bring the strike group to general quarters. I want every available Seahawk helicopter in the air, now. The massive ship began to hum as the alarm for general quarters sounded, a rhythmic, low-pitched tone across the carrier. Thousands of sailors moved to their stations. Steel doors were slammed and dogged shut. On the flight deck, the engines of two MH-60 Seahawk helicopters screamed to life. They were equipped with dipping sonar. They were the only hope of seeing beneath the surface. The minutes began to crawl. 2:16 in the afternoon. 2:17. The acoustic blackout remained absolute. It was a physical impossibility. Sound traveled 4 times faster in water than in air. To stop it required a level of technology that did not exist in any known inventory. On the bridge, Admiral Marcus Vance looked out at the horizon through binoculars. The water looked calm, too calm. He knew the Iranians were watching. Their radars were active. Their radio traffic was high, but they were not moving. They seemed to be waiting. 7 minutes, the admiral whispered. Why 7 minutes? He was a man who believed in logic and physics. Both were currently failing him. He looked at the digital clock on the bulkhead, 2:21 in the afternoon. The silence was not a technical failure. It was a curtain being drawn. Someone, or something, was repositioning the pieces on the board. The American strike group was the most powerful naval force in the world, yet in this moment, they were vulnerable. Suddenly, the sonar supervisor cried out, "Contact! Multiple contacts! All stations! Sonar is back online!" The screens did not just return to life, they exploded with data. The TAO leaned over the supervisor's shoulder. His eyes widened. "Count them," the TAO said. 1, 2, 5, 8, 11. The supervisor counted. 11 new contacts, multiple bearings. They are inside our screen. The afternoon was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 2:22 in the afternoon. The Combat Information Center on the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln was no longer quiet. The sonar supervisor gripped his console. His eyes moved rapidly across the glowing green display. The 11 contacts were arranged in a perfect semicircle. They were spaced exactly 1,000 yards apart. They were moving at 20 knots. They were headed directly for the carrier. The Tactical Action Officer stood behind him. "Classify those tracks. I need an identity now." The supervisor adjusted his headset. "Sir, I cannot. There is no narrow band signal. There is no wideband noise, no propeller cavitation, no reactor pump hum. Nothing. If the active sonar was not bouncing off a solid hull, I would say they were not there. The Tactical Action Officer, the TAO, looked at the screen. The tracks were designated as Sierra 1 through Sierra 11. They were ghost signatures. Every submarine in the world, from the quietest Russian Bore-class to the oldest Chinese Romeo, made sound. They moved through a medium that carried vibrations. But these 11 objects moved through the water as if they were part of it. Are they incoming torpedoes? The TAO asked. The supervisor shook his head. Negative. They are too large. These are ship-sized returns, at least 80 meters in length, but they are silent. They are the most silent things I have ever heard. 2:23 in the afternoon. The destroyer U.S.S. Strait reported in. The radio operator on the Lincoln relayed the message. Strait reports visual contact on the surface is negative. They have multiple sonar tracks. Bearings match ours. They are requesting permission to use active sonar pings. Admiral Vance was now in the center of the room. He looked at the main tactical plot. The 11 red dots were closing. They were now inside 4,000 yards. Grant permission, Admiral Vance said. Hit them with everything we have. I want to know what they are made of. The Strait energized its sonar suite. A massive pulse of acoustic energy was sent into the water. It was a physical blow, a sound loud enough to kill. A diver within miles. The TAO watched the return. The ping hit them, but the return is distorted. It is like hitting a sponge. The energy is being absorbed, not reflected. 2:25 in the afternoon. The 11 contacts did not deviate from their course. They were now 3,000 yards from the Lincoln. They had increased speed, 25 knots. The supervisor called out. 30, 35 knots. Sir, they are accelerating. Inside the carrier, the tension was a physical weight. On the surface, the sea remained unbroken. The water was flat and green. There were no wakes, no bubbles, no sign of the 11 giants moving beneath the waves. The admiral leaned over the plot. They are not Iranian. Tehran does not have anything this fast, or this quiet. The TAO looked at the weapons status board. Admiral, we are within the minimum engagement range for our escorts. If they keep coming, we will have seconds to decide. A voice came over the command net. It was the captain of the U.S.S. Kidd. Admiral, this is Kidd. We have an Iranian Kilo-class submarine appearing on our long-range passive sensors. It is 5 miles out, and it is running at full speed, away from us. The admiral narrowed his eyes. The Iranians are running. Sir, the sonar supervisor shouted. Sierra 1 just changed depth. It is rising. It is coming up fast. The ocean floor was thousands of feet below, but something was rushing toward the light. 2:27 in the afternoon. 12 miles north of the American strike group, the Iranian frigate Sahand cut through the water at 20 knots. Inside its small, cramped command center, the air was thick with the smell of diesel and sweat. The Iranian commander stared at his own sonar display. He did not see the American carrier. He saw 11 shadows moving between his ship and the American fleet. The commander spoke in a low, urgent voice. Are the Americans firing? His sensor operator shook his head. Negative. The Americans are in chaos. Their destroyers are turning. They are searching. They do not know what these things are. The commander gripped the edge of the chart table. He did not believe it. To him, this was a trap. He assumed the Americans were testing a new, invisible submarine. It was a provocation designed to draw first fire. Ready the anti-ship missiles, the Iranian commander ordered. If those shadows cross the median line, we defend our waters. 2:29 in the afternoon. Back on the bridge of the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln, the admiral watched the tactical screen. The 11 contacts were now positioned in a perfect ring around the carrier. They were not attacking. They were corralling the ship. It was a tactical maneuver of surgical precision. They are holding station, the tactical action officer reported. They matched our speed exactly. 3,000 yards out. Constant bearing. constant range. The admiral looked at the electronic warfare suite. Are they communicating? Nothing. Sir, the operator replied. No radio. No laser. No underwater telephone. They are operating in total electromagnetic silence. This was the nightmare scenario for any naval commander. An adversary that did not communicate was an adversary that could not be negotiated with. It was a machine-like behavior. Cold. Calculated. The Lincoln was now surrounded. To the north, the Iranian fleet was powering up its fire control radars. To the south, the 11 silent shadows held their positions like sentinels. Admiral, the TAO said, the Strait is reporting a spike in underwater pressure. Something is displacing a massive amount of water. Right beneath us, 2:30 in the afternoon, the ocean surface began to bulge. A dome of water rose slowly behind the carrier. It was the size of a city block. It was perfectly smooth. The TAO spoke into the command net. All ships, this is Lincoln. Stand by for possible surface engagement. Do not fire until I give the command. Repeat. Do not fire. Inside every cockpit on the flight deck, pilots gripped their throttles. In every engine room, sailors waited for the shock of an explosion. Both the Americans and the Iranians were staring at the same patch of water. Both sides believed the other had finally started the war. The tension was a wire stretched to the breaking point. It was no longer about a routine transit. It was about survival. The dome of water reached 10 feet in height, then 20. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 2:31 in the afternoon. The dome of water behind the carrier suddenly collapsed. It did not splash or create a massive wave. The water simply subsided, as if the gravity beneath it had shifted back to normal. The ocean surface returned to a deceptive calm, but the sonar screens told a different story. The sonar supervisor shouted over the noise of the room. Contacts are moving. All 11 tracks are closing simultaneously. Speed is 40 knots, 50 knots. They are coming in. The tactical action officer turned to the admiral. His face was pale under the blue lights. Sir, they are crossing the 1,000-yard mark. They are inside our minimum defensive perimeter, requesting permission to engage with anti-submarine rockets and torpedoes. Admiral Vance looked at the main tactical plot. The 11 red dots were converging on the center of the screen. The center was the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln. The admiral spoke with forced calm. Negative. We have no hostile act. They have not fired. They have not illuminated us with targeting radar. Our rules of engagement are clear. We do not fire first in these waters. The tactical action officer responded quickly. Sir, 50 knots at this range is a clear demonstration of hostile intent. If they impact the hull, we will not have a ship left to defend. The destroyers Strait and Kidd are requesting weapons release. The admiral stared at the video feed from the stern camera. Look at the water. Look at the wake, or the lack of one. The high-resolution screen showed the green water of the strait. There was no white foam, no churning bubbles, no displacement. At 50 knots, any vessel of that size should have been carving a massive path through the sea. These objects moved as if the water offered no resistance at all. 2:33 in the afternoon. The 11 contacts were now 500 yards away. On the bridge of the destroyer U.S.S. Strait, the captain gripped the railing. He could see the shapes now. They were just beneath the surface. Long, dark, shadows that seemed to shimmer. The captain spoke into the command net. Lincoln, this is Strait. We have visual on the intruders. They are not responding to bridge-to-bridge radio. They are not responding to sirens. We are losing steering control. Our rudder is non-responsive. The tactical action officer on the Lincoln checked his own status. Admiral, the Strait is reporting propulsion and steering failure. The Kidd is reporting the same. Their systems are being suppressed. Is it a cyber attack? The admiral asked. Negative. Sir, the TAO replied. It is a localized electromagnetic field. It is coming from the contacts. 2:35 in the afternoon, 12 miles away. The Iranian commander on the Seyhan watched his radar screen. To the Iranian crew, The American strike group appeared to be maneuvering for an attack. The 11 shadows were now so close to the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln that they appeared as a single, massive target. The Iranian commander spoke to his weapons officer. The Americans are masked. They are using a new electronic shield. Prepare the NOR anti-ship missiles. If those shadows move toward our territorial waters, we will defend our sovereignty. The weapons officer looked up from his console. Sir, my fire control computer is cycling. It is rebooting itself. I cannot achieve a lock on the American carrier. Something is pulling the signal away. The commander looked at the horizon. He could see the American fleet, but his sensors told him the ocean was empty. He felt a sudden, sharp sense of dread. The American admiral and the Iranian commander were now facing the same problem. They were losing control of their own ships. Inside the Lincoln, the lights flickered. The hum of the nuclear reactor seemed to change pitch. The sonar supervisor looked at his screen one last time, before it faded to gray. They are underneath us, the supervisor said. All 11 of them. They are right beneath the keel. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 2:36 in the afternoon. The U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln was no longer a warship. It was a $5 billion piece of drifting steel. The nuclear reactor remained online, but the power was not reaching the 4 massive propellers. On the bridge, the helm felt like a dead weight in the hands of the helmsman. Every digital navigation display was frozen on a single image, a repeating geometric pattern that defied explanation. Admiral Vance stood at the center of the bridge. He looked at the tactical action officer. Status of the escorts. Are they still operational? The TAO spoke into a handheld sound-powered phone, a backup system from a different era. Sir, the Strait and the Kid report total propulsion loss. They are drifting with the current, but their manual weapon systems are still hot. They have slaved their anti-submarine rockets to the last known coordinates of the contacts. The RUR-5 ASROC was a standoff weapon, a rocket-thrown torpedo designed to kill submarines at a distance. On the deck of the destroyers, the box launchers turned with a mechanical groan. They were aiming at the water directly beneath the Lincoln. It was a dangerous shot, but it was the only shot they had. Hold fire, the admiral said. If we drop a torpedo that close to our own hull, we risk sinking ourselves. 2:38 in the afternoon, 6 miles to the east. The Iranian Kilo-class submarine, Fateh, sat at a depth of 50 meters, inside the cramped, iron-scented hull of the Kilo. The Iranian sonar operator was sweating. He was listening to the sound of the American fleet, or rather, the lack of it. The American destroyers were usually a loud chorus of turbine noise. Now, they were silent. The Iranian submarine commander stood behind the operator. They have stopped. Why have they stopped? Commander, I do not know, the operator replied. The American carrier is directly above 11 unknown signatures. They are not moving. I believe the Americans are deploying a new form of underwater acoustic mine. They are masking the entire sector. The commander narrowed his eyes to his tactical mind. There was only one explanation. The United States was preparing to blockade the strait using a secret technology. If those 11 objects were mines, the Iranian Navy would be trapped in the Persian Gulf. Open tubes 1 through 4, the Iranian commander ordered. Set the wake-homing torpedoes for the carrier. If the Americans activate those mines, we strike before they can finish the deployment. The sound of metal on metal echoed through the Iranian submarine. The outer doors of the torpedo tubes swung open. In the silence of the deep, it was a declaration of war. 2:40 in the afternoon. Back on the Lincoln, the sonar supervisor shouted through the sound-powered phone, Admiral, I have a new contact. Bearing 090. It is a Kilo-class submarine. I hear the outer doors opening. They are targeting us. The admiral felt the weight of the moment. He was surrounded by 11 silent ghosts beneath his keel. And now, an Iranian submarine was preparing to fire. Both sides were reacting to a threat they did not understand. Tactical, the admiral barked. If that Kilo fires, we have no defense. We cannot maneuver. We cannot deploy decoys. Our electronic warfare suite is dead. The TAO looked at the weapons board. The only thing we have left are the manual depth charges on the Seahawks and the ASROCs on the Strait. We have to clear the water beneath us. We have to fire. Both sides had committed. The Americans were ready to drop depth charges on the Ghosts. The Iranians were ready to launch torpedoes at the Americans. The two most powerful forces in the region were seconds away from a catastrophic misunderstanding. Inside the Lincoln, the lights failed completely. The emergency red glow was the only thing left. The air was thick. The bridge was silent. Everyone was waiting for the first explosion. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 2:41 in the afternoon. Inside the Iranian Kilo-class submarine Fateh, the commander raised his hand. Fire tube 1, fire tube 2. Two metallic thuds shook the small submarine. Compressed air pushed the wake-homing torpedoes into the ocean. The weapons cleared the tubes. Their internal gyroscopes spun to life. They began to search for the massive, acoustic signature of the American carrier. But there was a strategic problem. The carrier was silent. The torpedoes began to circle. They were searching for a target that was no longer making noise. Inside the Combat Information Center of the Lincoln, the sonar supervisor screamed through the sound-powered phone. Torpedo launch, bearing 090. Two transients. They are in the water. The tactical action officer turned to the admiral. Sir, we cannot maneuver. We cannot fire decoys. The electronic systems are dead. We are a sitting duck. Admiral Vance did not hesitate. Order the Strait to fire. Drop the anti-submarine rockets on the bearing of those torpedoes. We have to intercept them in the water. (2:41 and 30 seconds in the afternoon). The destroyer, U.S.S. Strait, responded instantly. Two rockets erupted from the forward launcher. They arched into the hazy sky. Their solid rocket motors left a trail of white smoke against the blue. They were not aiming for the Ghosts. They were aiming for the incoming Iranian torpedoes. The 11 silent shadows beneath the carrier reacted. They did not move away. They moved together. They began to spin in a clockwise formation. The water around the Lincoln began to churn. It was not a wake, it was a vortex. A massive, swirling cylinder of water was forming around the 97,000-ton aircraft carrier. The sonar supervisor watched his backup display. They are creating a wall, a physical barrier of water. They are protecting us. 2:42 in the afternoon. The Iranian torpedoes hit the edge of the vortex. They did not explode. They were crushed by the comparative sheer pressure of the moving water. They were spun away like toys in a storm. Above them, the American rockets hit the goad, water. Their torpedo payloads deployed. They too were caught in the spin. The 11 shadows were now moving at speeds that defied every law of naval architecture. 100 knots, 200 knots. They were a blur on the sensors. The electronic field around. The fleet intensified. Every radio on every ship in the strait began to emit a single, high-pitched tone. It was not static. It was a mathematical sequence. On the bridge of the Lincoln, Admiral Vance watched the ocean rise. The vortex was now 50 feet high. It was a wall of solid, green water surrounding the ship. The carrier began to vibrate. A deep, primal hum shook the deck plates. It was the sound of a power that made nuclear energy look like a candle in the wind. The tactical action. Officer looked at his watch. 30 seconds until the field reaches maximum density. The admiral gripped the command chair. His knuckles were white. We are not the target. We are being isolated. The Iranian commander. The American admiral. The pilots in the sky. Everyone stopped. The world seemed to hold its breath as the spinning shadows reached a frequency that was no longer audible. 2:42 in the afternoon. The Strait of Hormuz. The spinning wall of water did not collapse. It simply stopped. The roar of the vortex vanished in an instant. In its place was a silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. The ocean surface became as flat as a sheet of glass. The U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln sat at the center of a perfect, still circle. Then, they rose, one by one. The 11 shadows broke the surface. They did not create a splash. They did not leave a wake. They were 80 meters long, featureless, oblong shapes. They looked like polished obsidian. They did not reflect the harsh afternoon sun. They seemed to absorb the light. There were no windows, no hatches, no antennas, no visible means of propulsion. On the bridge of the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln, Admiral Vance walked to the armored glass of the bridge wing. He did not use his binoculars. He did not need them. The nearest object was less than 500 yards away. It sat motionless on the water. No waves broke against its hull. It moved with the swell of the tide, but it remained perfectly upright. The tactical action officer looked at his handheld sensor. It was a battery-powered unit that had somehow survived the electronic surge. Admiral, they are emitting a frequency of 142 gigahertz. It is a perfect, constant pulse. It is not a weapon, it is a carrier wave. Then, every screen in the Combat Information Center flickered. The monitors did not show radar. They did not show sonar. They showed a map of the Earth, a blue and green sphere. It was covered in red dots, hundreds of them. They were located at every major naval base in the world: Norfolk, San Diego, Hainan, Sevastopol, Bandar Abbas, 12 miles away. On the bridge of the Iranian frigate Sahand, the Iranian commander saw the same image on his bridge monitors. He looked at his weapons officer. The officer was pressing buttons, pulling levers. Nothing happened. The Noor missiles remained in their canisters. The fire control computer was no longer under his control. The objects began to glow. A soft, pulsing blue light emanated from within the obsidian hulls. The frequency on the radio changed. It was no longer a mathematical sequence. It was a voice. It did not sound human. It was perfectly clear. It spoke in English. It spoke in Farsi. It spoke in every language used by the fleets in the strait. The voice spoke. The period of unchecked escalation has reached its limit. You will disengage. You will remain stationary. You are no longer the primary actors in this theater. The Admiral looked at the TAO. The TAO looked at the Admiral. Neither of them spoke. For the first time in his 30-year career, Admiral Vance felt like a spectator in his own war. He looked at the screen. The red dots on the map were beginning to move. They were all converging on the nearest bodies of water. In every ocean, in every sea, more shadows were rising. The Iranian commander on the Sahand picked up his radio. Lincoln, this is Sahand. Do you hear the voice? The Admiral took the handset from the operator. I hear it. Sahand. This is Lincoln. Our weapons are non-responsive. Our engines are dead. The Iranian commander responded. Ours as well. The Americans did not do this. We did not do this. I know, the Admiral said. The 11 objects began to move again. They did not head for the carrier. They turned. They formed a line. They began to glide toward the mouth of the strait. They were moving at 80 knots, and the water did not even ripple. The afternoon was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 2:43 in the afternoon. The bridge of the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln. The 11 obsidian objects had moved with impossible grace to the mouth of the strait. They were now positioned in a horizontal line. They sat like a black fence across the most important oil artery in the world. They were motionless. They were silent. They were waiting. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge wing. He held a pair of high-powered naval binoculars. Through the lenses, the nearest object was a void in the light. It had no texture, no rivets, no weld lines. It was as if it had been carved from a single piece of dark glass. The Admiral spoke to his bridge team. Are the visual lookouts seeing any change in their posture? The lookout responded immediately. Negative. Sir, they are sitting on the surface. There is no heat signature. Our infrared sensors are reading them as the same temperature as the surrounding water. They are physically there, but thermally invisible. 2:45 in the afternoon, 12 miles to the north. The Iranian frigate Sahand was also drifting. The Iranian commander stood on his own bridge. He looked at the American fleet. Then he looked at the black line on the horizon. The voice that had spoken over the radio still echoed in his mind. The commander turned to his executive officer. "What is the status of the Kilo submarine, Fateh?" The officer looked at a manual signal lamp. "They have surfaced, sir. They are reporting that their torpedoes were destroyed by some form of high-frequency vibration. They are unable to dive. Their ballast controls are locked by an external signal." The Iranian commander looked back at the American carrier. For 40 years, these two navies had practiced for a war against each other. They had studied every tactic, every weapon, every weakness. But in the span of 30 minutes, both fleets had been reduced to spectators. The commander spoke into the open bridge. "This is not a battle. This is a demonstration. We are being shown that our weapons are toys." 2:48 in the afternoon. On the Lincoln, the lights began to pulse. The hum of the ventilation fans returned. The screens in the Combat Information Center flickered, and then stabilized. The map of the world with the red dots was gone. In its place was the standard tactical grid. The tactical action officer checked his console. "Admiral, systems are returning. Propulsion is coming back online. I have steering control." The sonar supervisor shouted. "I have the objects on sonar again. They are no longer masking their signatures. They are loud. Sir, they are emitting a low-frequency pulse. It sounds like a heartbeat." The admiral walked back into the bridge. "Check the weapon systems. Do we have fire control?" The TAO pressed a sequence of buttons. "Negative. Sir, the defensive systems are online, but the offensive triggers are hard-locked. I cannot arm a single missile. I cannot even rotate the 5-inch gun. The system says unauthorized in 3 different languages." The admiral looked at the screen. The 11 objects were still there. They were not attacking. They were simply denying the ability to attack. 2:50 in the afternoon. The admiral picked up the radio handset. "Sahand, this is Lincoln. Our systems are partially restored. We are holding position. We have no intention of engaging your fleet. We are prioritizing the investigation of these intruders. Do you copy?" A long pause followed. The air was thick with the smell of salt and the heat of the Gulf. The Iranian commander's voice came through. It was no longer aggressive. It was tired. "Lincoln, this is Sahand. We copy. We are also holding position. We have no offensive capability. We are watching the line." The two most powerful naval forces in the Middle East had reached a forced truce. It was not born of diplomacy. It was born of absolute, shared helplessness. The admiral looked out at the 11 shadows on the horizon. "They didn't just stop a war," he whispered. "They took the weapons out of our hands." The shadows began to glow again. A deep, pulsing violet. The afternoon was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The Strait of Hormuz. The heat over the water remained oppressive, but the tension that had gripped the strait for the last hour had shifted. It was no longer the sharp, electric fear of an imminent missile strike. It was a heavy, atmospheric dread. The 11 obsidian objects at the mouth of the strait were no longer pulsing. The violet glow had become a steady, piercing light that seemed to vibrate the very air. On the bridge of the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln, Admiral Vance watched the nearest object through his binoculars. It was 500 yards away. The surface of the object began to shimmer, like a mirage on a desert road. The hard, sharp edges of the obsidian hull became soft. Then, transparent. The tactical action officer checked his digital readout. "Admiral, the frequency is shifting. It is moving out of the audible range. It is climbing into the terahertz gap. Our sensors cannot track the modulation. It is too fast. They are losing physical density," the sonar supervisor reported. His voice was breathless. "Sir, the sonar returns are weakening. It is as if they are becoming part of the water itself. The acoustic mass is evaporating." Inside the Combat Information Center, the blue lights of the American consoles seemed to dim as the violet light from the objects intensified. One by one, the red dots on the global map began to wink out. The objects in the South China Sea, the ones off the coast of Norfolk, the shadows in the Mediterranean, they were all departing at the exact same moment. Then, there was a flash. It was not an explosion. There was no sound, no heat, no pressure wave. It was a single, silent burst of brilliant white energy that lasted less than a millisecond. It was so bright that even the bridge crew with their eyes closed saw a flash of pure, static white. Then, the ocean was empty. The 11 objects did not dive. They did not accelerate toward the horizon. They simply ceased to be. The space they had occupied was now nothing but green water and white seafoam. The black line that had blockaded the strait was gone. 3 o'clock and 1 minute in the afternoon. The tactical action officer looked at the main tactical plot. Contacts lost. All 11 tracks have vanished from radar, sonar, and visual. The mouth of the strait is clear. The admiral felt the sudden, physical return of the ship's natural vibrations. The deep hum of the ventilation fans returned to their normal pitch. The status lights on the weapons board turned from red to green. The unauthorized message on the fire control screens disappeared. It was replaced by the standard standby prompt. "We have full fire control," the TAO said. His voice was low. "The locks are gone. Everything is back to normal. We are green across the board." Admiral Vance walked to the bridge wing and looked toward the north. The Iranian frigate Sahan was still there. It was a small, gray shape against the hazy coastline of Iran. He could see its signal lamp blinking. It was a manual, non-electronic communication. The admiral picked up the radio handset. "Sahand, this is Lincoln. The intruders have departed. We are resuming our original course at 12 knots. We are maintaining a defensive posture only. We have no hostile intent. Do you copy?" A long pause followed. The sound of static on the radio was the most beautiful thing the admiral had heard all day. It meant the interference was over. The Iranian commander's voice came through. It was steady, professional. "Lincoln, this is Sahand. We copy. We are returning to our patrol sector. We will not interfere with your transit." This was a strange day, Admiral. "It was," the admiral replied. "Good luck to you, Sahand." There was no celebration on the bridge of the Lincoln. No cheering. No one felt like a winner. The crew moved with a mechanical precision. But their eyes were different. They had seen something that made their entire mission seem small. They had been shown that the most advanced naval strike group in history could be switched off like a light bulb. The TAO looked at the admiral. "What do we tell the Pentagon?" "Sir, this is going to be a long debrief." The admiral looked out at the empty water. "The truth. We tell them we were relieved of duty by something that didn't ask for permission, and something that isn't finished with us." The afternoon was quiet. For the first time since 2:15, the silence felt normal. 6 o'clock in the evening, the Gulf of Oman. The U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln had cleared the Strait of Hormuz and entered the open waters of the Arabian Sea. The sun was a bruised purple on the horizon. The flight deck was quiet. No jets were launching. No helicopters were dipping sonar. The strike group moved in a tight, defensive formation. But the atmosphere on board was not one of relief. It was one of profound, silent reflection. Inside the admiral's cabin, the air was heavy with the smell of coffee and high-end electronics. Admiral Vance sat at his desk. He was staring at a decrypted message from National Command Authority. He was not the only one. Across the world, every fleet commander who had experienced the blackout was receiving the same briefing. The admiral spoke to his chief of staff. They are calling it an atmospheric anomaly, a localized electromagnetic surge caused by solar activity. They want us to sign off on a technical failure. The chief of staff shook his head. "Sir, we both saw it. The Iranians saw it. Solar activity does not form a perfect semicircle around a carrier. It does not speak in 3 languages on a secured frequency." "I know," the admiral said, "but the alternative is admitting we are no longer the apex predator in these waters. No government is ready to tell the public that." 2 days later, the Pentagon, Washington, District of Columbia. In a windowless room, 3 levels below the ground, a group of analysts sat in front of a massive digital display. The screen showed the playback of the Lincoln's sonar data from the 7 minutes of silence. They had run the data through every supercomputer in the basement of the National Security Agency. The lead analyst stood up. He looked at the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "Sir, the acoustic blackout was not a loss of signal. It was a rewrite of the laws of physics. For 7 minutes, the water in the Strait of Hormuz did not propagate sound waves. It was as if the medium itself had been programmed to be silent." The chairman leaned forward. "And the 11 objects? Where did they go?" "They did not go anywhere, sir," the analyst replied. "They did not leave the area. They ceased to have a physical presence in our dimension. Our high-speed cameras captured the flash. It was a massive discharge of Cherenkov radiation, the kind you see in a nuclear reactor. But there was no heat, no fallout. They simply shifted out of our range of perception." 3 days later, Tehran, Iran. Inside a secure facility near the Alborz Mountains, the commander of the Iranian frigate Sahand stood before a council of senior officers. He was presenting the same evidence, the same confusion, the same realization. The Iranian commander spoke with a quiet, hardened voice. "We have spent decades preparing for the Americans. We have built missiles to sink their carriers. They have built shields to stop our missiles. But in the face of these visitors, we are the same. We are both primitive. We are both irrelevant." One of the generals scoffed. "You suggest we stop our modernization because of a ghost story." "I suggest," the commander said, "that we are being watched, not by an enemy we can fight, but by a force that is tired of our games." The voice said, "The period of unchecked escalation has reached its limit." I believe them. The final strategic assessment was never made public. It remained classified at a level higher than the president's daily brief. The official report cited a massive, multi-system hardware failure triggered by a rare seismic event on the ocean floor. The public moved on. The news cycle shifted. But on the bridge of the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln, and on the decks of the Iranian frigates, the sailors look at the water differently now. They no longer see a battlefield. They see a surface that can be peeled back at any moment. Modern warfare is a game of technology and will. But the events in the Strait of Hormuz proved that there is a higher ceiling to that technology than anyone imagined. The 11 shadows are gone, but the frequency remains in the background of every sonar sweep. A heartbeat. A reminder. The oceans are not empty. And whatever is watching is not finished.